stylistically, the most obvious comparison would be Telltale or Kentucky Route Zero. Did you take inspiration from them, and did you have any inspirations from any films or television shows or anything like that?
Sure, absolutely. I mean, I think The Walking Dead, The Wolf Among Us, those have really helped push forward the episodic space for just average gamers. And so we took a lot of inspiration from how they kind of develop their character narrative and how they lay out the plot points so that you feel like you have influence without having to write 50 different versions of the script. And then, of course, Kentucky Route Zero with their really distinct style, and they're just kind of off-the-wall narrative design. I mean, is a lot of what is going on here, and yet it's really compelling. So those are huge influences for us. Of course, we're trying to take the noir side of things, so lots of noir films obviously play in. But as we build things more and more, we realized that we were taking a bit more of a theatrical approach versus a traditional cinematic approach. And so that's when the stage really found its own presence here. As you'll see in the demo in a little bit, we've got actually small vignettes laid out on the stage and allow us to set things up in a completely different mood with the lighting and style than any other traditional game.
When, in terms of how it actually plays, does it resemble Telltale in terms of like dialogue trees, or is it more like puzzle based or kind of interaction based?
Sure. Yeah, we're definitely on the dialogue tree side of the spectrum. We feel the most compelling narrative comes from really interesting characters and how those characters interact with each other. So that's what we highlight on. There's lots of small conversation decisions that will push the emotional tone one direction or another. People may like you a little more or less, and then every once in a while there's really important decisions that'll kind of shift your character in a completely separate track. For example, earlier on in the demo, you choose, the interrogator says, what was your major flaw? Like, what did you do or wanted to get your editor so mad? The player doesn't really know. They just have to pick one, and whichever one they pick, that'll kind of follow them throughout the rest of the game. So that's really important, and then we intersperse that with this news game, which kind of came out of just natural play and iteration. What happens is you're talking to a lot of people, you're gathering facts, you say, I talked to this guy, he told me these things about the person who died. At some point you have to collect those and decide, how do I want to report this to the world? I may not have a lot of information, so maybe I go cautious and just give them the facts, but that's not going to drive much traffic to my blog, so I need to maybe go more edgy and start making outrageous claims, which is nice up front, but it's going to alienate the people in the town. So you've got this push and pull between, do I make something that's not true just so that I can please my editor, or do I say the facts? What do I pick?
So there's almost an element of like the Phoenix Wright games there in terms of building your case,
A little bit, so you're not going to be doing quite the LA Noire style of super hardcore interrogation, but you are playing a little bit of yourself against the town as you start to figure out like who's actually responsible here. Now the demo is showing the first character. We actually have 3 playable characters. What happens is you'll go through a few scenes with one, and then the next character will rotate in. You'll jump backwards and forwards in times, almost like a Guy Ritchie film. And these threads will slowly build together and come together near the end, and of course in a very unusual way.
Would you say initially did the game design inform the story, or did the story come from the game design in your early stages?
No, that's a good idea. Good question. I think there were some design principles. We knew as a company we wanted to build narrative-driven games. Obviously, that's like a design principle, but then the story of like, what is this crazy Florida tourist trap? What's the town? How does that inform the gameplay elements? I think they fed back and forth. We would go through phases. We work very quickly in almost a sprint or scrum style environment. So we would try to build out a section of content and then test that. I mean, this iteration that we're going to be showing today is really like our 3rd implementation of the content. We had back in the fall. Technically all the story was there, but as we played it just wasn't quite there yet, right, in terms of gameplay. So we would go back and say, all right, how do we recompress and reshuffle the story or the design to match the mood that we're trying to set? And that's kind of where we settled in on this.